Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hello everybody, I'm an alcoholic. My name's Keith. I want to thank Clancy for inviting me to participate here, and it's always a privilege to be able to participate in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Probably the most important thing that I can share with you this evening, and it hasn't been necessary for me to take a drink or do any dope since May the 11th, 1976, and for that I'm especially grateful. And I drank alcohol until I achieved pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization, bought myself a Harley Davidson and a bag of dope, and became a legend in my own mind. Really, I know there's some other legends here because I can feel them. And I heard my story when I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous, and maybe you can relate to it. I used to drink a little beer and think maybe I ought to do something, and smoke a little weed and kind of fantasize how I was going to do it. Shoot a little speed so I had the strength to do whatever it was I was going to do. Do a little coke so I could be cool when I did it. And then I'd drink a little whiskey and forget what the hell it was I was going to do. Kind of a pig myself. I didn't really specialize, but the good news for that is it hadn't been necessary for me to sit in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and wonder if there's anything I should have tried. I'm grateful for that. I'm a fourth generation alcoholic, and that doesn't necessarily, it doesn't, I'd like to be a victim, but through a little therapy I learned that sadists are seldom victims, so I just kind of had to accept the fact that if there's anything that environment taught me was to be a survivor, and I'm grateful for that. I was born in Texas, and that doesn't necessarily make you an alcoholic. I like to blame it on that, but really what that gave me was certain character defects that once you pour a little whiskey on it, I've always had the ability to recognize your character defects, and I've always had a terrible need to tell you about them. Therefore, drinking was a contact sport for me. I've had a certain real need to hang around sick women. I love sick women. The crazier they are, the better I like them, and an attraction for that. I met a sick, crazy lady one Saturday night when I wasn't doing anything, hanging around a little country dance in the Texas Panhandle one Saturday night. I just got out of jail. The state of Texas had taken my driver's license away forever. Didn't have a job, didn't have anything going for me, and I asked this crazy lady to dance, and I don't think we really fell in love with each other. We kind of fell in sick with each other because the rocks in my head fit the holes in hers. Eventually, we made a commitment to something. I don't remember what happened there any more than I remember crossing over the invisible line, but she ended up having a little girl, and I looked around one day and I got a wife and a kid and a 120-pound German Shepherd dog that hates me and a cat that's attacking me all the time, and I'm not real certain where any of this came from. I'm a thief by trade. I don't like to work, and those things resemble responsibility, and I didn't know what was going on. Eventually I had to leave Texas. That'll happen to you if you stay there and do what I was doing. I hear people talk about those kind of trips in Alcoholics Anonymous, and they call them geographics, but in Texas they called it unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. I moved to California because a guy offered me a job on a ranch 40 miles west of Long Beach, and I didn't have sense enough to know that was ocean. I packed up this crazy lady and a dog and a cat and a kid and started for California. And the amazing thing about it, everywhere I went, I took me, and I'm the first one to get there. And I got busted just as soon as I got to California, which is why I left Texas. And ultimately, I had to find a place to rest because I did a lot of speed. That's like going 190 miles an hour with your feet nailed to the floor. I was busy all the time. I like to do things. I'm among the visible 1% out there doing things. I mean, I just like the deal. I just want to be in the deal, and I just was always trying to do a deal, and you get tired eventually, and I had to come home, and I came home, and this lady was crazy and yelling and screaming, and the kid was bawling all the time, the dog was barking, and the cat was scratching me, and she always set up these traps inside the door so I couldn't sneak up on her, and she'd put pots and pans inside the door, and I'd be coming up with all my friends, and I'd open the door and step in one of these pots, and I wore cowboy boots and pointed-toed boots stick in the pot, and they ain't cool when you got your boot in the pot, and you got your gun in your boot, and you're trying to get your gun out to defend yourself because this crazy lady's waving a 12-inch butcher knife around trying to stab you all the time. And I just come home to rest. I'd finally get things calmed down and, lay down and then, get a little rest. I always woke up quick, man. I woke up quick. I don't know about people that lay there and think about it. I wake up quick. Speed freaks wake up quick. And I always had an intuitive thought, and I needed something to get my heart started. And I'd go out in the kitchen, put about 100 mini bennies in a blender and a little orange juice, a couple of raw eggs, and pour myself a big glass of vodka and hit it a couple of times with some Tabasco so I could call it a Bloody Mary and drink that and chase it with the other. I always had an intuitive thought. I like to mow my front yard at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning because I didn't have a front yard. I had front dirt. I like to mow front dirt. Front dirt's more fun than front yard. You don't need a grass catcher if you mow front dirt. And I'd get out in the garage, find my lawnmower, and about that time all that stuff would go off 2 inches behind my belly button, and I didn't make any difference if I couldn't find the rope. You can push start your lawnmower with that, ain't you? I'd get out in the front yard and try to mow my front yard. I don't know, I didn't have a very good maintenance program back then, and one morning my mower died about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know, it must have been something that I brought from Texas. I don't know, if it don't run, kill it. And I shot a hole in my lawnmower with a 44 mag at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I know that isn't too cool. After I came to AA, some of my friends who had all the Marine training to be, trained killers, I was always kind of envious. I had to kind of train myself, start out with lawnmowers, it was an experience. You watch the bullet go right through the thing, and then the cops come and they want to talk to you about what you're doing out in the front yard, and then the conversation gets a little weird, and then they want to run my head into their nightstick 5 or 6 times. And then my wife comes out and wants to talk to them about not taking me away because I got all these things to do, and then she goes nuts on them, and then they put the handcuffs on her, and you got it right now that she's the crazy one, and then some cop will say something rotten about my wife, and I got to punch him because you can't talk about, I'm the only one that can talk about my wife like that. And then they hit me over the head and take the handcuffs off of her and put them on me, and then I go down to the jail, and she comes down, write a hot check, and get me out. And it's kind of the way it was when I was a social drinker. I don't know about you. I ended up going to jails and nut wards a lot so they could discuss my attitude and what was happening in my life. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what was going on. And ultimately, I ended up standing in front of a judge one more time, and he's talking to me about me, and he's got the right guy, and he's talking to me about violating my parole and for something I didn't even remember. And he's talking to me about going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I didn't know anything about Alcoholics Anonymous, never even heard of Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew something about jail. I did not want to go to jail, and so I said, I agree. You didn't have much of a choice standing there. I said, I'll go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and my parole officer let me go home, and they, signed me to this meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and gave me a person to call, and I called this guy up, and he came over and talked to me about Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, he was old, and he just looked like, he was living death, and I just, I thought I was going to have to tell the dope fiend neighbors that he's my granddad or something. I mean, they were cool. They were taking LSD, laying in the front yard watching the sun come up and go down. I couldn't let this old guy from AA blow my image. I mean, And I told my wife I got to go to Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and it started at 8:30 that night, and it was over at 10. And I laid down to think about it, and about 8 o'clock she come over and stuck this butcher knife in my face and told me to get up. And where are we going? And she said, well, we're going to that A&A meeting. And because she'd been to a lawyer a number of times, and he'd told her, this lawyer finally told her I was probably an alcoholic. And, you know, I got up, and I mean, the cops had taken my guns away, so, you know, she had the knife. I went over to this church, and there she drove me over there in this car, and there was a big AA sign out in front of the church, and I thought, oh, man, you know, if my friends see me here, you know, it's really going to blow my image, you know. And she said, what time's the meeting start? And I said, oh, it starts at 8:30, and it's over at 10. And she said, I'm going to tell you something, Ace. If your ass comes out of that door before 10, I'm going to gut you. Now, you can keep a drunk like me in that church house if you got a crazy woman circling the perimeter out here, I'll guarantee you. But I won't learn nothing. I won't learn nothing because I'm not an alcoholic. I'm just there to get the heat off. And an amazing thing, you know, they talked about sponsors, they talked about the steps, they talked about going to a lot of meetings. I never heard nothing. I didn't identify with any of those things. And well, there was one thing I heard while I was in there. I stayed clean and sober for 4 months. As long as she waited in the parking lot. I never heard nothing except one thing, and I remember that later when I started drinking. There was some old fool in there that looked me right in the eye one night, and he said, we will not guarantee you've had your last drink, but we'll guarantee you'll never enjoy another one. God, I remembered that when I started drinking again. I mean, it just come right back to me. Eventually, I got drunk, and a lot of things happened to me in the next 4 years that I was drinking and doing my thing. I went back to Alcoholics Anonymous a few times, but you know, I wasn't there for anything but just to get the heat off. And the next 4 years of my drinking was just unbelievable. I'm a violent drunk, physically violent. I know today that comes from fear, and I really won't debate the fact that somebody verbally abused people is more damaging than physical abuse, but I will let you know that I was talking to you when I was beating the hell out of you too. So there is hope for those people who are verbal. They can become physical and vice versa. But the thing that I remember the most is in the next 4 years of my drinking, I remember standing in my kitchen and looking down the hallway, and a little 9-year-old girl standing down at the end of that hallway, and she had her chin on her chest and her hair was in her face, and she'd stand down at the end of that hallway like a wild animal, and she lived in a room down on the other end of that house, and there was an umbrella of fear over that house. It was beyond hate. And I'd stand there and take a drink out of that jug and look at her, and she didn't run down that hallway and get me around the leg and say, Daddy, please come and play with me today. She didn't say anything like that at all. She just looked at me, and I'd turn around and take another drink out of that jug, and without a sound, she'd be gone, because all she really wanted to know was which direction I was going, so she'd go the other way. And I lived like that not one day, not 1 month, but for 4 years, and the insanity of that, it wouldn't work. I couldn't even get a fraction of a thought of what it was, and I reached for everything that I could reach for in order to try to get no matter how physically drunk I got, I knew I was just what I thought I was, and ultimately I ended up in a motel room up in Taft, California, hiding out. And I don't know if any of you ever been to Taft, California. It's not a real social place to drink, but it's a good place to hide out. And I was hiding out up there in a motel room, and I couldn't stand me anymore. I had to crawl out of there. There was a couple of different groups of people who had contracts on my life. I found out later one cheapskate had a slingshot and a BB, but, you know, kind of impressed me. Whenever you're paranoid, it gives you something to think about. And I finally crawled out of there, and I came back home one more time, and there was a little gray-headed man that believed in Alcoholics Anonymous, believed in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and believed in 12-step calls, and a series of events, and some people that believed in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I suppose a little effort on my own, because the seed had been planted. This little gray-headed man came to my house, and he did a 12-step call on me, and I can't tell you that I met him with open arms and said, you know, I'm just excited to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous because it was the only place I had to go. It was the last house on the block. It was the last place for me to go. I'd run out of friends and enemies at the same time, because, you see, I'm the kind of an alcoholic, as long as there's one man, woman, child, dog, or cat that'll roll over when I snap my fingers, I won't look at me. I will not look at me. I won't do anything about me. I'll just roll over you. And I'd run it all out, and that little gray-headed man came to my house, and And he talked to me about the loneliness, and he talked to me about the fact that there's a possibility that I could live the rest of my life one day at a time without drinking or using anything, that I could live a sober life. And I didn't understand any of those things, but it was the only thing I had going, and I followed him. And he took me to a detox, and they put me in this detox, and I stayed in there a month. People from Alcoholics Anonymous came to this detox, and it wasn't as fancy as some of them today. It was mostly just people from Alcoholics Anonymous coming there and talking to you about Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't, I could remember a few things about Alcoholics Anonymous. I really didn't understand anything about what they were saying, but it seemed to me that there were certain things that they said I was going to have to do that I was willing to do, and I didn't really understand it. I was riddled with fear. I'd take 3 steps down the hall and cry, and 3 steps down the hall and laugh. I was just insane because I just didn't physically sober up and just become wonderful. I was full of fear. I was full of anger. I didn't understand these feelings that I was having, and yet on the other hand, I felt a little secure there. And they talked to me about things like how long I drank, and I don't know, 20 years, 22 years. They said, well, you'll have to go to a meeting every day for at least 22 years before you can have a night off and go to a movie. They told me things like, they told me that a guy as crazy as I am is going to have to work the steps, is going to have to get a sponsor, and they assigned me a sponsor, and they gave me a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they sent me home. And I went home and knocked on the front door, and this crazy lady came to the front door, and I said, I got to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous every damn day for the rest of my life. What are you going to do, bitch? We get real spiritual once we sober up. She just looked at me real, oh, I've been going to Al-Anon, the kid's been going to Alateen, the dog's been going to Alley Dog, and the cat's been going to Alley Cat. What are you going to do? And I didn't know what to do. I went in and called my sponsor, and he said, don't do anything, I'll come and get you. And he came and got me, and he started taking me to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was just crazy. I was just crazy all the time. I owed a lot of money, and I owed it to people that you don't call them up and say, I'll send you $1 a week, man. I had the heat on. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know. I had so many guns on me that if you'd have bumped into me, there'd have been a mushroom cloud. I didn't know what to do. I'd sit at a stoplight, and I'd tell my sponsor, talk to me about God. And he said, well, you see that guy standing on the corner over there? And I'd say, yeah. He said, well, do you want to kill him? I said, no, I don't even know him. He said, well, do you want to kill him? And I said, no. He said, well, that's spiritual for you. For a guy that made an enemy every day, that's spiritual. Okay, I didn't understand it. I went to a meeting over in Anaheim. I went to a men's stag. I went there because they talked my native tongue, profanity. My friend Dope Fiend Richards over here, man, and he used to sit next to Richards, the sickest meeting there was, but I felt good in there. I could sit there, man, and people would talk about weird, sick stuff. Sick, and I'd judge them, and I'd take a gun out of my boot, take a bullet out of the gun, write their name while they're sharing on the bullet, and hold it up and say, I'm going to kill you right after the meeting. You deserve to die. Put the bullet. I'd do that 2 or 3 times, and people would just smile and talk sick stuff. They didn't even pay any attention in there. After the meeting, they'd stand up and hug you and say, we love you, keep coming back. And I think, I'm coming back next week and throw a grenade in here and kill you all. I had to go to work. I was trying to run a deal. I had to go up in Wyoming I'd worked in the oil business, and I didn't know what to do with that, try to run a deal. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous with all the deals. I came here and sobered up, and it was me. All the character defects I had, I brought with me right here, and I owed all this money. It was just insane all the time. I was trying to shuck and jive. I didn't know anything else. All my good ideas that I brought into Alcoholics Anonymous with me is kind of like taking shock treatments. I was a little apprehensive, but the adrenaline flow was okay, and then the rush was great, and then you were kind of childlike afterwards. That's the way so I'd try it, I'd run it, and I was up in Wyoming trying to run a deal, and I came home. By then I'm a year and a half physically sober. I've done an immoral inventory, a fearful inventory. I had to make amends to a herd of sheep, and I'm doing the best I can with what I got, and I come home, and I run up to the front door, and my wife comes to the front door. I said, get in the bedroom, I'm horny. I've saved myself for you. She said, no, I've been going to Al-Anon, and I've worked the steps. I have a sponsor now, and I've discovered that you haven't made love to me in the last 10 years. You've raped me on a regular basis. I thought, well, that's a hell of a way to treat a spiritual giant. I'm a year and a half sober. I've saved myself. She said, you're sleeping on the couch. And I went over and laid down on the couch and started pouting. And about midnight, while the dope fiends live next door decided to mow their backyard, I guess. I don't know. She come running down the hallway and run in there and said, the dope fiends next door are all mowing their backyard. I can't sleep. I jumped up off the couch, got my 44 mag, run out the back door, leaned over the fence, and blowed that hippie's lawnmower all to hell. She ran over there and throwed her arms around me and says, oh, Daddy, I just love you when you're a hero, and took me and then throwed one on me. I mean, I didn't understand it. A couple of days later, the hippies moved out. I was single-handedly cleaning up a neighborhood that had been corrupt for years. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's the way I was. I didn't know what to do. 3 years sober, I'm dying inside. They told me to get active in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm doing the best. I'm going to meetings. I'm all the time. I'm cleaning up, and I'm just crazy. And, you stay sober 3 years, prosperity sets in. I'm paying a few things back. I'm doing pretty good. I got me, prior to coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, I hadn't had a haircut in a number of years, hadn't shaved in a long time. At least I trimmed my beard and got my hair a little bit. I went down to CNR Clothier and got me one of them suits, irreversible vest, irreversible jacket, irreversible tire, irreversible hanky, and irreversible shorts, and I went down and bought me a big Mark IV Lincoln, with a long hood, and put my suit on and went down to the Alano Club on Saturday morning and stood over in my corner and parked my Lincoln out front, so the newcomers would have hope. And my sponsors stand on the other side of the room, point at me and say, ain't he wonderful? 3 years without a change of attitude, I was standing around that club one Saturday morning just crazy as a loon. I didn't know what to do, and I looked around, and a weirdo was standing next to me, the weirdest looking guy you ever saw, hair sticking everywhere, and he wasn't tall enough to be a man, he wasn't short enough to be a midget, just weird. And I asked him, what do you want? And he said, will you be my sponsor? I thought, oh, Christ, man. I'm cool. You should have a judge or somebody asking me, and so I don't know, I'll have to ask my sponsor. And I went over to my sponsor and I said, that weirdo over there asked me to be his sponsor. Can you believe that crap? And he said, yeah, I sent him over there, I hate to snivel my sponsor, and I went back to that weirdo and I told him, I said, my sponsor says I got to be your sponsor. What do you want to do? He said, I want to go for a ride in your Lincoln, I got him in my Lincoln, we started going to meetings, and he's talking sick stuff to me, sick stuff. And then right in the middle of it, he'd say, you ever do anything like that? And I said, yeah, I did some stuff like that. And he's, well, tell me. I'd start telling him my stuff, and he'd say, man, you're sick. You're sick. You need to go to a meeting. And okay, we go to a meeting. And, I'd walk in a meeting with this weirdo, and he'd point, that's my sponsor. I'd say, don't tell people I'm your sponsor. My friends would stand over there and watch me come in and say, boy, it's going to be fun to watch you two grow. I didn't know what the hell. It was crazy. And I took him to hear spiritual giants and all kinds of things. He went and got a Bible and started reading the Bible. He wanted to ask me about the Bible. I don't know nothing about the Bible. The only thing I know about God is what they told me in the very beginning. There is one, and you ain't him. He asked me about, they burned the bush. They had the burning bush. They had the parting of the waters. And I didn't know what. I thought, I was sitting out in my old Lincoln after a meeting one night. I think if I had some lighter fluid, I could torch the hedge or something. I don't know. I thought, well, I got a 45 in the glove box. I took it out, jacked it back, stuck it up against his head, and pushed real hard. And I said, I'm going to count to 10. If this gun doesn't go off, believe in God. And I did, and it didn't. I put it back in there. He jumped out of my car and went crazy, run around out in the parking lot, run back in the club and told my sponsor, showed him that ring on his head. He said, he stuck a gun to my head. My sponsor told me, I said, yeah, ain't he spiritual? And I know that's crazy. I don't know it. We're both still sober, man. I didn't know what to do. I was crazy. People wouldn't come and sit next to me in a meeting. I just radiated so much hate, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was sitting at home one Sunday morning reading a spiritual book, something that somebody had talked to me about. I didn't understand it, but I was trying to read it. It didn't make sense, and I was trying to look like I was spiritual, and they come and knock at the front door, and I went to the front door, and there was that weirdo, man, at my front door. He's crazy. He had his old car parked in my driveway, and stickers all over it. My neighbor's going to know everything now, and he had, like half of him was stuck in the concrete, and the other half of him was going to Tijuana, and he had a big book with paper stuck in it, and he was just crazy. And I asked him what he wanted, and he said he wanted to work the steps like I did. And I'm trying to think, how the hell do I know I did them, And I got him in there. I said, the first step says I'm powerless and my life's unmanageable. I know that's a fact because you're in my house and it looks like you're going to stay, And the second step says, come to believe that something can restore you to sanity. I know you're crazy and I understand you, so we must be on step 3, And I told him I had to get on my knees and do that third step prayer with another human being, and he got on his knees right there in my kitchen and said, get down here. And I got down there on my knees and we read the third step prayer together, and he cuddled up next to me, and oh man. So man, if my wife sees me down here on my knees, she's going to know I've whacked out for sure, Then the cat walked by and looked weird at me, Then he jumped up and said he wanted to do his fifth step right there. I said, you got to have that done when you get to your sponsor's house. And he said, no, I can't write, and he threw some paper and a pencil in front of me, and he said, I'll talk, you write, and he started talking, and I started writing, I'm writing away, and then he said that stupid thing again. He said, you ever do anything like that? And I said, yeah, I did some stuff like that, and he started telling me, more, and I said, yeah, I did some of that, and then I got to remember that there was a couple of things I forgot to tell my sponsor whenever I did my fifth step. I knew we'd invited God into the room, and this guy couldn't read. I just put some of my crap in his. What the hell, We burned it, and it just, I felt good, and he jumped up and kissed me and took off, and out in the front yard, waved real big Sunday afternoon in front of God and everybody. He said, I love you, and I said, well, it's all over now. Divorce her and follow him, I don't know. I don't understand these feelings, but I know something today. I know that, I'm grateful for Old Timers as sponsors because they knew I was dying. I was physically dying, dry in Alcoholics Anonymous, 3.5 years sober, and they knew if I didn't get out of myself, I was going to die. I wasn't going to stay sober. I was going to go absolutely insane, and no matter what they told me, they had to show me, they had to help me. And I know that day when that guy left my house, I knew that for some period of hours there, I had not thought about me, and I hadn't thought any less of him for what he'd shared with me and what he said, and I let him go knowing those things about me. There was no secrets there that day. I let him walk out of my life, and I didn't have that fear. And I'd like to tell you, every day's been a holiday and every meal's been a banquet from that day to this, and that's not been the way it is for me. I've had to change. I've had to change to stay here. I'm afraid of change. God, I don't want to change. I don't know who I am. I know when I was about 3.5, 4 years sober, one Saturday morning I was going to go to a meeting, and I left the house. My wife was on the phone talking to an Al-Anon, and I went and put on a 3-piece suit, went out and got my big car, drove a block down the street, turned around, came back, went in the house, said hi to her, walked in, took off my suit, put on my cowboy hat, my boots, and walked out, my jeans and vest, walked out and got my pickup, said bye to my wife, walked out and got my pickup, drove 2 blocks down the street, turned around, came back, went in, took off my boots, my vest, my jeans, went in and put on my leathers, went out and got on my Harley, went 2 blocks down the street, and that's not it, and come back home, and my wife was talking to this lady on the phone, and the lady asked her, said, how many people live there? She said, oh, just one. The alcoholic don't know who he is today. He's just, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what, I'm trying to pay this money back. I owe these people, and I'm trying to stay sober. I'm trying to, figure out what's going on in my life, and, I was paying these people back the best way I knew how, and I told my sponsor, I'll pay them back, I'll pay these people back, but don't tell me how to get the money, and what I was doing was compromising, and I was selling my soul just a little bit at a time, and I had those old ideas because I never shut the back doors, and I was still doing a lot of things in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was active in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've always been active in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've always had strong sponsorship, and I've had to stay around here and do things that have been asked of me to do, and I'm very grateful for that. And at 9 years sober, I woke up one morning, and I'd like to tell you that at 9 years sober, I woke up this morning and decided that I'm going to change my life. That's not what happened at all. I woke up one morning and my life changed because, you see, when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I asked you for help. Help me stay sober. Help me stay physically sober, and you did. You told me, come go with us, and you did. And I turned that part over to you, but I didn't turn the rest of my life over to you. I said, I'll run my life, I'll do my life, I'll do these things. Don't tell me how to do that. Just help me stay physically sober. And I'm grateful for physical sobriety. Physical sobriety is the most important thing there is for me, but I've had to change. 9 years sober, I'm standing in front of a judge one more time, and he's talking to me about me, and he's got the right guy, and he's talking to me about over 20 years involvement with organized crime. And what that did, that it destroyed all the trust that I'd built in 9 years sobriety. I watched that lady in that house that we'd been together over 20 years, and I loved her very much. She's going to 4 and 5 Al-Anon meetings a day. or a week, and in a AA meeting a week, listened to the other alcoholic, and that little girl had grown up and gone to Alateen, and good things were happening. But you see, it's one thing to tell a lie, but it's another thing to live a lie. You can't live a lie and stay sober. You can't. You got to change. You can't stay here and not change, and I'm afraid of change. You see, I don't know anything about what I'm supposed to be. And I'm trying to just stay sober. I'm doing the best I can. By the time I'm 9 years sober, I've been the chairman of the Southern California Convention, the largest annual convention in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been a big deal. I can take you to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous where I sponsor a lot of people, 40, 50 people in that meeting, and they'll all tell you that I've saved their life. They better. Because I've done it all. I've been a big deal around here. I've been in service. I've done all these things, you see, but at 9 years sober, it didn't make any difference. That judge did not want my AA resume. What he wanted to know is about me. You see, up until including that time, I was not free. I was just loose. I was just loose. And I had to sit through that deal, and I had to walk it out because the old-timers took me by the hand, and strong sponsorship, and the people in Alcoholics Anonymous who've been through those things took me by the hand, and they literally walked me through it. And I'm grateful for the old-timers around here who believe that 9 years of sobriety is just as important as saving as 9 days. And they walked me through these things by holding my hand and telling me, we've been through these things. We've been through these things, and we've been able to do it and stay sober and walk with a little dignity. And I had to walk through those things. I had to go make some amends. I had to stand in front of people and say I'm wrong. You see, I never wanted to say I'm wrong. I don't want to say I'm wrong. If I say I'm wrong, I got to change, and I don't want to change. I want to run around here with that attitude. I want to run around here and say, let me do my deal. Let me be a big-time deal around here. And I'm grateful for people like Clancy and Johnny, my sponsor Johnny, stood beside me, and they had the faith in me. They shared with me. And they told me, you know, you just stay here. It's time to close the back doors. It's time to change. You quit running around here shoving this thing up everybody. You got to come around here and be an alcoholic. That's all you really are, just an alcoholic. And I'm grateful because there's a loving God that gave me some time before I had to make these changes, that allowed me to just come here and be a part of you. And I had a commitment here, and my friend Chuck B has always allowed me to work and be a part of the commitments. The actions that I've had to take has just allowed me to show up so that I can find out about myself and accept about myself and accept that I'm willing to change. I had to stand in front of people and say, you know, my wrongs are that I'm not going to do it anymore. And I've had to go get a job and punch in and punch out. And I've had to, you know, try to learn something about loyalty and about friendship and about love and you know, try to be an unselfish lover to my wife and be a father to my daughter. And you know, the people around here have given me the strength to do that. They've given me the strength to do that so that I can come here and I can stand here and I can stand in front of you, and I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'm free. The reason I know that because from the very second I woke up this morning to this second right now, baby, I've seen them all. I've been downtown with them. I've seen them all. I've seen the tall ones, the short ones, and the rich ones, and the poor ones. And the amazing thing about me today, because of you, I haven't seen one person or thought of nobody I'd rather be than me. See, that's freedom. You gave me that. You gave me the dignity to walk in here and just be a human being, just be an alcoholic, and accept my fears, and to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'm right on track. Right on track. The people that held on to me, that kept me from veering off in those other directions, saved my life. People in rooms like this, you allowed me to come here and be a part of you, and for that I'm forever grateful. Thank you.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. If that shows up, the gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.